right, thank you and welcome back. So first up is Fabian Marrone, Chief Marketing Officer at Monash University. He leads the Strategic Marketing and Communication Division at Monash and is responsible for enhancing Monash University's global and national reputation. Joining Fabian for our post-presentation discussion are Dan Wild, Head of Digital at Webfirm, and Jonathan Orchard, National Head of SEM and E-commerce at Wavemaker. So specializing in PPC, tracking and reporting, Dan Wild leads a team of specialists to deliver objective-driven campaigns in verticals from education to FMCG. And over the past 14 years, Jonathan Orchard has worked with some of the world's leading brands, managed his own consultancy business, and operated within teams in-house. So let's get started with Fabian's presentation. Modern marketing department. Can a modern marketing function be successful if communications are separate?
Thank you very much, Harry. Thank you, SEM Rush, for having me. It's a thrill to be the first presentation opening up this really innovative approach to conferences and learning and development. Can a modern marketing function be successful if communications are separate? I was recently at an event in Sydney, the CMO 50, and the discussion was about what should be under the remit of the CMO. Should more tech components come in? Does data science fit in there? What fits within the CMO's portfolio? Made me reflect in anticipation of this presentation opportunity is that the one thing that I think must intrinsically be linked to marketing, must be sat together and fully integrated under the CMO's portfolio, is marketing and communications. I was shown this slide around 10 years ago by my then boss and still now mentor about brand and about what brand means. And brand to me is reputation. Reputation is delivered, enhanced and built not only by processes, product marketing, but also by the communications that sits around it. It's underpinned by identity, underpinned by behaviour and underpinned by performance. But delivering on those three components takes marketing and communication strategy. It takes marketing and communication channels. It takes now more than ever a digital first and a data approach in delivering and deciding what channels you should put that through. So my question to myself was, well, why should marketing and comms be linked? Because I believe the answer is, if you're delivering on your purpose and your value proposition, they are really one and the same thing, just a different bunch of channels. So today I'm going to host a one-sided debate, really, as my presentation in trying to talk about why comms and marketing must be under the one banner, and particularly now more than ever in a digital-first world and where a news story can break on social rather than through a press release, or where a marketing campaign or advertisement actually stems from a media announcement. They're one and the same things, and therefore comms and media planning need to be done together and delivered together. Comms effectively owns internal communications. Well, anything that goes out internal these days is also external communications, because our employees and people that work within our communities are amplifiers of great content, both organic, paid, etc. One thing that I've been really focused on in developing strategy and in conversations with fellow peers and CMOs globally is really that product and service marketing has been replaced with value-based and purpose marketing. We're seeing more and more organisations stand up for what they believe in as well as what they deliver as a product and service. I think I have the very privilege of working for Monash University, which stands for a number of different things, but also has the beauty of academic freedom. So every day from a comms perspective, we're allowing the whole workforce to go out and tell their story as well as our corporate story, which is very different in a world where you would separate comms and marketing. We're using communications and marketing as our storytelling vehicles. So I believe when you tell your purpose and your truth, often, and our experience will show, is that people will want to comment and engage with that purpose and truth. We released a campaign last year called If You Don't Like It, Change It. If You Don't Like It, Change It was released on streaming and on YouTube and digital first, because it wasn't on television channels. And with that became a new challenge in developing and releasing campaigns. The community was integrating. It was an interactive communication as well as marketing campaign. It wasn't advertising. It was something that people immersed themselves in. So we had people challenging the nature of the communications, which issues management to come in, which is largely a communications banner. But if comms sat separately from marketing, that would be a disjointed experience. It would not allow for community moderation, which you get in more organic comms channels and social. I often sit with the team and we talk, what is a comms channel? What is a marketing channel? I'm not sure of the distinction anymore. I'm not sure that there should be a distinction. As I said before, you can tweet something out on social and that could end up in a newspaper anywhere around the world. So your channel mix needs to be focused on where your audience is, not split against what's a marketing channel or what's a comms channel or who owns this channel or who owns this audience. It needs to be where the people you're at and where they need to be communicated. And then behind that, you decide if you need to, promote a post through paid post, or if you need to use an organic channel to deliver a marketing campaign. It's more about the channel mix than it is about splitting the functions and preparing and planning for them separately. This one's really interesting to me because the rise of the influencer is so important, and I talk about the university landscape in this and freedom of speech and academic research. We have thousands of people releasing research across Monash every single day, and they are able to do so through media channels, but they have media directly contact them. They have their own social channels. So you don't have one spokesperson, you have thousands of spokespeople, and the importance of having influencer training and the appropriate channel training for those spokespeople and influencers to get their message out is because it's amplifying both your marketing and communications messages. So we're seeing over time the erosion of the official spokesperson and the rise of the influencer talking on behalf of not only what they're delivering but on behalf of organisations, and that's difficult to manage when you look at marketing and comms, particularly because a corporation might have a certain value proposition and stance, and that might be different from an academic freedom and research, but it's the reason that comms and media needs to be together. As such, the importance of cross-channel training and training up everyone within an organisation, I believe, in a university, your academic and professional staff, but in corporate organisations, your product, your sales, your marketing people, how they can use their own channels to amplify what the purpose is of the organisation and to help facilitate the marketing communications, but also so they can help build up their profile, which in turn links back to building the organisation. So identifying people that should be trained on behalf of an organisation is important, looking at the channels they use to deliver it, how they can get involved with what you're releasing from a comms and marketing piece, how they can amplify, and how we can monitor, report and review and give them value add for coming on board and telling the comms and marketing story. This is all a very different approach from that separate spokesperson comms, traditional comms approach. It's integrating the marketing and communications channels to allow individuals to tell authentic stories through a cross-channel approach, which has served us really well in the amplification of the Monash value proposition, our campaigns, our research and our educational stories. I get really stuck talking about organic, paid, owned, earned when we're having conversations with the team. We can go into quite technical definitions of those things, but I think this is all mixed and merged into one now channel mix. And again, as I said before, wherever your audience is and whatever you need to do to reach those audiences to help them become involved in the conversation and to help your organisation tell their story is where you should be focused. You shouldn't be focused on having a marketing strategy and that being delivered and having these KPIs and having a comms strategy, because if you're doing really good marketing, if you're really doing really good brand, you're measuring and monitoring your reputation. What that means in our Monash world, look, we have so many fantastic research outcomes from rockstar academics, so many fantastic alumni stories, student stories, but they're not all going to end up on the news because the news has a different cycle. So we have created a content stack delivered through our own direct news channels, our own social channels, our own vehicles of campaigns, documentaries, a whole range of different things that we can still tell the story through a different channel. We might be telling what was traditionally a comm story or a news story through a marketing channel, but it's still reaching the audience, and we can still segment and define the audience and make sure the right people are seeing that. There is a cautionary tale, and I know I probably shouldn't debate with myself, but I will, and I will slightly contradict myself at this point, that comms and marketing under the same banner, the difficult part in managing that is issues management sits with comms, and sometimes you can have an issue arise, or you can have a comms piece arise, both proactive or reactive, that can divert your focus from some of the marketing-led campaigns. And when you're running MarTech, and when you're running demand generation, audience marketing, content and channels, you need to be able to give everything the same level of focus. So it's about building that marketing structure underneath, where you don't slow the reactiveness to your comms, you maintain due diligence in your issues management, but you empower the team that is running the tech at the front end to make the decisions and to have the platforms and the content channels to deliver the authentic stories without having to wait for the CMO's lead on a marketing or comms piece. My final piece is a bit controversial, but I've said it a few times. Brand tracking for me is not the future. It's about reputational tracking through sentiment. We currently run an algorithm to look at how we view reputation, which people would call brand, and that looks at our social commentary online, pulling in our news hits and the sentiment from news online, pulling in the content of our stories and the way the community is engaging, and that is what sits primarily on my dashboard to look at brand tracking. It's not something I do once a year, it's not something I do once a quarter, it's something that is live, and we look at the sentiment and how the community is engaging and responding to what Monash is putting out into the environment, and that is a combination of monitoring comms and marketing channels and integrating those to give you an overall, brand score rather than a point in time, because I don't believe we're in an environment or a society where organisations or individuals can look at their brand once a year. It's something that we need to look at daily and have underpinned by really robust data across every single channel. And your comms and marketing people need to be looking at what data is important to be defining what your reputation is in market at that point in time. So to end the Monash journey, with a large university of such a big size, we have so many different stories and we have so many wonderful things to tell the world, but when you've got so many stories coming from so many places, that could cause fragmentation. But in the coordination of comms and marketing, it allows us to coordinate, look at all of the stories we have on the horizon, ensure the right stories get their time and the energy allocated to them, they get their moment in the sun, and they get the right channels and dedication to them and to pushing those stories out to the right audiences. And therefore we can amplify what we need to amplify at the right point in time to make sure that the world and all our audiences hear the Monash value proposition, hear the purpose, and hear it authentically. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that, Fabian. So Fabian, just a reminder, was a CMO at Monash University, and thank you so much again for that insightful presentation. So Fabian spoke about, to the panel, Fabian spoke about editorial being at the center of every marketing content strategy. How have each of you applied that thinking to your work? Dan, why don't you have a go?
Yeah, so you can't make marketing without content. You can't make anything without having great stories to tell. I think you were mentioning before about alumni and having these great success stories is essential to proving the performance of your brand. And I think that if you are not engaging with that type of thing, getting people involved in that sort of section, you're going to get to a point where you're saying a lot in terms of maybe media, maybe amplification, but there's no meat behind what you're saying. There's no success behind what you're saying. And so, when we go out with clients and we go out and we deal with them and their marketing strategies, we always sit down and make sure that what they're delivering, what they're creating is both beneficial to their end user, impactful for the brand, really importantly, and then finally that it's attributable and that we can know where it's coming from.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jonathan, did you have any thoughts?
Yeah, so the digital world has definitely transformed everything and blurred a lot of lines, and I feel like the communication is definitely one where it's more blurred than most. Fabian spoke about how channels, the mix between what a marketing channel and a communication channel is it's not easily identifiable. And one thing we found is that some of the best stuff we get from a marketing campaign can come from areas that we wouldn't traditionally have looked at. An example of that is if a call center is receiving a lot of calls about complaints that customers are making, then we're working that into what sorts of content can we push out that solves those issues and shows that we're the brand that they should be working with.
Amazing, yeah, absolutely. So we've also got a question from one of the viewers, and Mariana asks, and this one I think is for Dan, because he talks a lot at Webfern about attribution modeling. So with attribution modeling, how do you measure things like sentiment, Dan?
Oh, geez, hitting the hard questions first. Look, it's a mixture of things. I think it really depends on, first of all, where are you in market? You know, if you are a small business and you see all of your value in Facebook or Instagram, whatever it is, you can use API connections to help develop an algorithm, as was mentioned, to help understand what's going on. That could be all sorts of things. You can have hot spotting for keywords, so finding out if people are using negative keywords to what you're selling or the way you're selling it. Looking at things like engagement. I mean, I did hear someone say, you know, oh, measure the love icons of, engagement of Facebook. And I went, no, maybe not that. You want to go in a little bit more detail. So, you know, if you're using, there's a lot of external tools that will help you measure that type of thing. But largely it comes down to how are people engaging with you in that platform. You may be required to go to getting some internal data as well. We mentioned call centers just a moment ago. You know, we have to filter through what's going on within all the channels and start to develop an understanding about, firstly, how much does it weight towards what we're doing, which is the hardest bit. Is, well, if someone says, oh, you know, your product sucks and you get a 1 star on Google, that's not a good thing, but perhaps you can use that as an opportunity to turn it around. And so you might weight that differently to, you know, a news report that comes out and says something quite damning. So conversely, the positive side of it is also true. You know, if we see people talking very positively about your brand, you just need a way to balance that with everything else that's happening in platform. And generally, whenever I go about it, I tend to focus on breaking it up platform by platform. What I would expect from Facebook is different. What I'd expect from Google is what I would different to what I would expect from an internal source as well. So it's about weighing those things up at not only the individual severity level of perhaps the comments that are being said, but also the individual platform success as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree, you've got to weigh those different platforms differently because they do different things. Your bounce rate on AdWords might be different to things like Google.
Yes,
and it's good that you kind of look at those as you know, kind of different in their metrics in a way. So, Jonathan, I know at Wavemaker, you guys do a lot of this. So I've got a question from Anton here. Any tips on the AI tools that you use to measure sentiment and reputation?
So we've looked at how, especially from a Google perspective with Google Places, how users are engaging with reviews. And especially when we have a client that has a wide range of locations and it's difficult to manage those in real time, we have tools where we will monitor what the sentiment is using Python scripts and stuff like that to see if there's going to be a problem appearing and how we can get ahead of that with our media and our marketing and deliver a message that will enable us to defend ourselves in certain areas.
Amazing, yeah. And so in terms of building upon that statement, with sentiment, how do you go about determining that? Outside, like, is there an AI tool that you use? Is there a software that you look at, or is it more of a manual process?
It's an internal developed tool. We have a lot of tech specialists that will be able to build something specifically for each requirement of a specific client. So we don't have a tool that will be widespread. It's usually a case-by-case scenario. The challenge is making sure we're not just picking out a negative sentiment just for the sake of it. It could be a review that is just written in bad faith because they've had a negative experience, and you're probably aware that like reviews are heavily drawn when there is a negative experience. There's not many good reviews, and they're difficult to find. So being sure that we're weighing up how we're approaching that is something that's always been a challenge. But just, I think the key thing is to be aware and have the tools available so that you've got that vision to see what's happening around.
Yeah, it's a really good point, and a good thing for, I think, a lot of the viewers and people tuning in to hear from some of those kind of front-running companies and agencies. So exciting stuff. So I also got a question, Dan, if you don't mind. So Fabian talked a lot about this comms and marketing strategy and the integration. How do you find on the ground as an agency working with clients to do that goes?
Not making it easy, mate. Look, I think it's about building trust with any client we work with. I think the first thing is when you engage an agency, you need to be sure that they're not only doing the work, but are actually doing it in a way that you're happy with, in a way that you know that they're using your brand well. That's the first thing, right? But when it comes to my sort of everyday is, I usually spend a bit of time with the comms team because we tend to focus on the marketing component. And we talk through things like brand identity, brand voice from their side of things and the objectives that they want to achieve. Then what we do is we basically, and 95% of the time, it ends up being an amplification strategy of sorts, and then an attribution strategy to combine that, because there's no sense paying Google lots of money without seeing the success or without seeing the data. So what we then would do is take that strategy, turn it into something that can be amplified in a way that's a mixture of always on and seasonal or reactive content as well. And really just aim to boost up the metrics that the client's after in the first instance. Now, we obviously do combine that with making sure they're future-proofed with the algorithm updates that are hitting us like crazy at the moment, and making sure that content is not only user-friendly, but also Google-friendly.
Amazing, yeah. And Jonathan, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think one of the challenges we find, especially when a brand in an area where they have an industry award that's very significant and very pronounced, it can become quite a challenge when the brand will then try and push that message throughout every single piece of their marketing, and that becomes a primary goal. Yeah. And we want to approach marketing from an audience first perspective and make sure we're tailoring the content to as many individuals as possible. But when we're pushing out, leading in this category, it takes away some of the opportunity to deliver a specific message to those people.
Comes away from that personal attitude, doesn't it? It becomes more about the award than the performance that actually got you it in the first place.
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest pitfalls of marketing is to focus on yourself as a brand and not the solution for the customer.
Correct.
Yeah. It takes away from that authenticity approach and that genuine purpose piece, which is why with the comms and marketing together, you're really coming from an audience first, core purpose perspective, and that piece doesn't feature as much.
Yeah, and when everyone has a voice, it's so important that we're audience first. Absolutely. We need to be so sure that they understand what we're doing. If you're just spouting out awards, it's probably not going to be received as well as talking about real scenarios, authentic truth.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So there's some awesome examples now out there with a lot of brands taking to Twitter and having that customer-focused and customer-led interaction, right? So the tone that we've seen across the internet has changed quite a lot from the corporate speak that we're used to, and there's all sorts of subreddits and communities almost dedicated to when corporations lead from a non-customer first perspective. Did you guys have any thoughts on when maybe it is what companies maybe have to think about what they say online? Or I know in your case, Fabian, from Monash University, you have to be a bit careful about what you say online. Is that correct?
Look, I think, as I said before, we've got this unique piece called academic freedom. So people who have done research in their field can go out on the internet and say anything in relation to their research, and which we promote and we ask them to do. Monash as an organisation has its views and has its position as well. So we basically push it all out, and we just monitor and we let the community self-moderate. Monash is an ethical organisation that always lives its purpose. So we're really comfortable with being open and transparent and having those conversations in real time and online where they happen. So we're actually facilitating going the opposite way, empowering people to tell more of the story authentically. And I think you'll see in the media the rise of corporations, CEOs coming out and talking about and standing for certain things in equality and a whole range of sustainability, a whole range of other areas, and that's been debated. Should corporations do that? And I think they should. If they've got a purpose and a belief, they should be using that as part of their communications.
Amazing. Did you guys have anything to add on that?
Yeah, look, I think the way that we're communicating is becoming around that authenticity piece more and more. I think it's gone are the days where a brand is just a brand. It could be a belief. It's got to be something that you can take hold of, right? And I think that you were mentioning subreddits and Twitter and all these things. More and more, and maybe less so in Australia particularly, but more and more globally, these are just extra avenues to show that we actually care about the things we really do care about, and being both transparent, but both being truthful and being consistent with our purpose at all times. As long as we're doing that consistently through marketing, I really do feel, or rather through our online channels, I really do feel like every business can benefit from doing that, provided they have the manpower. I think that's really where it becomes a bit of an issue for internal teams, where you can't monitor everything. And unless you do have an algorithm or you have something that can help you with that, it's quite a difficult thing to get into. So you have to be ready for the risks associated with that.
Yeah, amazing.
And absolutely, I feel like everything where you talk about the integration of all teams is that you need to have one consistent message that's delivered throughout the whole team. Because if you're going out with a marketing campaign that says we're customer first, we're all about our clients and our customers, and then later down the line you've got a really bad customer service experience that gets pushed out onto social media, there's no rock to hide behind. It's out there. As soon as it's out there, you delete it, it doesn't matter. It's still there. And that's just going to remove the trust of those customers and remove the trust of your business as a brand.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, guys. It's been an absolute pleasure just hearing you guys and absorbing this, and I hope you guys have enjoyed it too. So again, thank you to Fabian Morone, Chief Marketing Officer, Monash University, Dan Wild, Head of Digital at Webfirm, and of course Jonathan Orchard, from National Head of SEM and E-commerce at Wavemaker. So that was a great discussion on aligning functions for a joint marketing and communication strategy. Please share your thoughts on Twitter and beyond using the hashtag Global Marketing Day hashtag. So without further ado, let's head into the next speaker presentation.